Hour 2 of Implicit Bias continues to roll along, and it's our implicit bias to try and help everybody out there. And what we are going to discuss in the penultimate segment, that's the second to last segment of the show, is something that affects everyone, regardless of race, color, creed in this country, regardless of political affiliation. This is one that just really makes us mad. Well, makes me mad. I'll let the rest of the crew fill you in as we bring this episode to you from the Mr. Lester's Top Secret Podcast lair somewhere in downtown Lafayette. Danny Izo, Chris Castro, the rustic renegade himself, Caleb Morse, Tug, Aaron David in the corner instead of Walker, because Walker apparently needed a break from Hell Week. I don't know. Anyway.
You want me to do my impression of Aaron? Like, he's got wavy hair, too.
He's got wave. Oh, okay, yeah. You got to flip it. Flip the head. Full on flip the head. Smoldering. I love it. Okay. So there's a video I sent out about what John Deere is doing to farmers. Now, I'll put this on our socials, and it's not necessarily completely about John Deere. We're not going to slander John Deere or anything like that. But what we are going to talk about is the fact that there are actually companies arguing that we don't own certain things that we've bought. That in fact, all we have bought is a license for said product. So let me give you some history of when this started to pop up on my radar. So I'm old, but I'm old enough as a member of Gen X. Yeah, I know Danny's laughing because I'm old. Danny's ancient. Anyway. You made it too easy, Danny. You made it too easy. Anyway, I'm old enough to remember Napster. I'm old enough to remember when the music industry almost ceased to exist because musicians were producing music and Napster created a platform where I could take music that I purchased. I might purchase a CD, I might purchase a cassette, I might purchase a record at the time. I might convert it all to a digital platform. And I can take what I purchased and share it with anyone I pleased. The music industry, as you can understand, had an issue with this because essentially what that created was a scenario where the music industry wasn't getting paid for sales of all of their records. Now, the problem with that is this, is that there is a long-term law on the books. And I'm so glad Chris is here because our counselor, the consigliere, Chris Castro, is on the show so he could have a little bit of a conversation around this. There's something called the first sale doctrine. So this is where the issue comes in. If I were to buy a physical copy of a book, I can give that book to anyone. It's my book. I bought it. The first sale doctrine dictates I bought the book from the person who created it, therefore I own the physical property and I can do whatever I want with it. Well, we are now seeing the flip side of the Napster problem because it went from Napster to video games. Because in video games, you would buy the actual cassette or you would buy the CD and you would get it and you would own it. And if you wanted to go sell it, you could go sell it. And that is not against the law. Today, still, it's not against the law. So what did video game companies do? They took a note from the music industry who sued the guy who created Napster. And they sued him into oblivion to make an example of him. And they sued some of the users as well to prove a point. And the point was this. You don't own it. You paid for it. You bought it from us, but you don't own it. You have a license to use it. It still belongs to us. And that has crept its way into, dear Lord, cell phones, cars, tractors, pretty much any product with any sort of software. And what companies are now even doing is creating software so that you can't own the property. They create proprietary software so that when you buy it, They actually will argue in court, you don't own it. You licensed it from them, which means that if you want to get it fixed, you got to go through their proprietary software and you got to pay for them to get it. So I'm going to pause right here because designed obsolescence has been a thing for a long time. And this is essentially where we are. You want to know why that washing machine that you have is more expensive to repair than it is to replace? It's because of this. It's because of the licensing of product and software. That, my implicit bias, that needs to get fixed.
So I didn't watch the video.
Shocker.
But yeah. But I'm very familiar with this kind of thing. So what I'm understanding you're talking about is probably the 8,500 horsepower and bigger, the big land movers.
Oh, it's the big farming
Yeah.
equipment.
You have to use their software for their geolocation, their mapping programs, all this other stuff. It's very, very common, especially with John Deere. And if you don't pay for it every year, you can't use the equipment because it doesn't know where it is.
It's not even that. It's not even that.
Really? Not
It's-
even that.
It's when the equipment breaks. When the equipment breaks, you have to have their proprietary software to diagnose what broke to fix
Yep,
it.
yep, okay.
And if you didn't pay for that software or you're not a licensed dealer, which is the only people that John Deere will sell that software to, you are at their mercy. So what should be a $150 fix is now $5,000. And instead of it being a 30-minute fix, it's now a 3-week or a month fix. That's the problem.
And or I would just say that it's not only the you need that to diagnose it. Once the problem is diagnosed, you need the software in order to effectuate the repair. So because everything now is computerized, and you have to have that module that will get into the engine system and affect airflow and timing and all of these kinds of functions that get the machine to work, the engine to work in a proper concert in order to make it happen. And so not only do I have to diagnose the problem, you got to pay them to their software to diagnose it. You got to have their software in order to effectuate the repair.
That's what happened when we left the mechanical world, right? Mechanical injection, all this
exactly.
other, and they said, "Oh, it's to better to be more efficient, better fuel economy, better this, better that." In actuality, better control.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Much
I'm
better
sorry.
control. And look, planned obsolescence is a real thing.
It is. Danny?
Well, I want to go back and clarify a couple things.
Yeah.
You buy a book, you are not allowed to do whatever you want with that book. You can loan it, you can read it, you can loan it to a friend. You cannot copy that book and sell copies of that book to people.
Correct. So I can.
Okay, this
I
hits at
could,
the heart of my business.
So I could sell my copy of the book.
Yes.
You're right. But I cannot copy it and sell it. Correct.
No, you can't.
Correct.
And that's a
It's a big distinction. It is.
big distinction,
And it's
and
why
it's a
we
big
have-
thing in the copyright laws. You are the first user, the first owner. You can do whatever you want with that particular copy. We've had people come up to us
As a photographer, go ahead.
as a
Yeah,
photographer
yeah.
at dances and say, well, I'll just buy one copy and make a whole bunch of copies for my friends. No, that's illegal.
Right.
Okay?
You own that
You
individual
own
piece
that
of property,
copy.
Correct.
but
And
not
you
the
can-
intellectual property and not
Correct.
the
Exactly.
proceeds that come from that
Exactly.
property.
Correct.
Now, that being said, I hate where this has gone.
Well, to your point, it's there. The law's there for a reason, right? It is there to protect those who actually produce things like you do and people who
Right.
write books.
Right.
Because buying one book and me selling one book, it's not an issue.
Right.
Me buying one book, copying it 10,000 times and giving it away, which is what Napster was, that's a problem. That is a problem.
And see, I also have a background in music.
Yeah, but again, that's a problem.
And it's the same thing, yes.
Where that-
Napster was just
But I think where that has been applied, is where I don't think it was intended. I don't think it was
Correct.
intended for someone to say, hey, you have this car, this tractor, this piece of electronic, this piece of hardware, right? This physical hardware, and you can't even repair it
right.
without you essentially paying whatever extortion fee we want you to pay us because we've locked everything
Well, like,
and we can't let
Yeah.
you get to it.
And
look in my industry, right? You know, when you look at electronics, everything else, the cameras you use and all that, they wear out, and there's a lifespan. In the gun industry, it has to last forever, and the most thing we have to worry about is a proprietary set of screws. But with the advent of electronic firearms, which have come out, now all of a sudden I have to buy a software program to do repairs.
And unfortunately, we have to do repairs before the final segment. Why? Because Tug in the corner is giving us the finger. And I mean the 1 minute finger, not that finger, I know, which I actually gave to somebody else earlier. But that's okay. Come back. We've got a fantastic last segment about Uranus on the final segment of this week's episode of Implicit Bias.